call it having a money date, even once a month, just really sitting with your finances and looking at, okay, what are the inflows? What are the outflows? What does my financial picture look like? That can be really, really helpful because again, what we focus on grows and what we track expands.
Welcome to the Phase 4 podcast, inspired by Vishen Lakiani and Ajit Nawalkar, co-founders of EverCoach, a division of Vine Valley. In this podcast, we speak to coaches and creatives about where they were, where they are, and where they are going. This is an intersection of what we focus on expands, and your story is your superpower. My guest today is Rebekah Kiger. She is a trauma-informed master and money mindset coach. And today we're going to talk about that and much more. Rebekah, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, JP. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, me too. We've been talking for over the last couple of weeks, and I'm really excited for this conversation because I talk a lot about mind, body, spirit, which is what you do, but you do it a lot more from a money lens, which will help my listeners. And I'm kind of excited to dig into it, but I really just always begin with, tell us a little bit more about yourself and how did you end up in this space?
Yeah, a great question. So my background is in finance. I've been in finance for about 18 years now, but it did not start off this way. I actually grew up below the poverty line. My mom was a single mom with 7 kids. So we grew up in a very depressed area of the US, very crime-ridden, still one of the most dangerous cities in the country. And so I had absolutely no example of what it was like to be quote unquote successful. I just kind of saw like the only way you get out is like you become a professional athlete, you sell drugs, that's about it. Like that was the example of what I saw. And I ended up repeating a lot of the same patterns that my mom did. But we also had a very abusive upbringing. So I had a stepfather who was incredibly abusive, lots of trauma, lots of chaos. There was a lot of issues when I was growing up. And so I didn't really have, like I said, any great role models as to how to become successful. And not only did I not have great role models, it was kind of the opposite, where I felt like the cards were a bit stacked against me. So I ended up becoming a teen mother myself, just repeating a lot of the same patterns that my mom did. I was single, I was on government assistance, and I just didn't have the option to go to school. So when I was 18 years old, I graduated high school with a 6-month-old. I graduated with honors still, and I did graduate, but I kind of had made the decision that I've got to provide for my baby. I can't go to school. I've got to figure this whole kind of career thing out. And so I started working at the bank and started at like minimum wage, right out of high school, and ended up working my way up. But that kind of started my corporate hamster wheel, if you will. I was working a lot. I was picking up as many shifts as I possibly could. My definition of success was, okay, hard work is what equals success. I've got to put in the hours. I've got to grind. I've got to hustle. I've got to sacrifice a lot. And I did sacrifice a hell of a lot of time with my daughter, a lot of, recitals and different things that like as a mother, I wish I could go back and have those times again. But it's one of those things where I got to this crossroads about 4 or 5 years into my banking career where I had worked my way up. I was getting raises every single year, promotions every single year. And I was probably making about $60,000 a year at the time, which to me, I was like, I made it, right? Like I came from making my first year $9,000 and I'm like, I made it. I'm doing incredible. I don't have a degree. I just worked my way here. And this is what success is. And I realized, though, that I had given up so much of myself, my time, my health to pursuing money. And it was coming at the expense of, like, again, this burnout. So I was sort of at this crossroads where I was like, okay, I'm making more money than I'd ever imagined possible, but I'm exhausted and I don't think I can do this anymore. And as fate would have it, that's about the time when my mentor came into my life. And that's when he sat me down. We started setting goals. He's the first person who came into my life and showed me what SMART goals were and actually helped me to see what was possible for me. And he asked me a question that I'll never forget. It was, hey, if money were easily made, what, and you could make any amount of money that you want in the world, how much would you want to make? And I was like dumbfounded with the question because I'd never really thought about it as something that I could just choose. It was always just, oh, you just make what you make, right? Like you get a job and it pays you whatever that job pays. And so I remember after some back and forth and me lowballing him that we came to an agreement of $100,000 because I wanted like this round number. And I was like, okay, sure, I'll make 100,000, like with no expectation of it happening, no understanding of how I was going to make it happen. The only thing I had was belief in him. And I say this, and I'm going to pause here for a second because I really feel like sometimes someone else's belief in you can be enough. Like borrowing someone else's belief in whether or not you can actually achieve your goals is an okay place to start. I'm going to tell you that's where I started. And so 9 months later, I hit my first six-figure year, and I'll never forget. It's like one of those things that's like burned in my memory. I looked at the pay stub at the end of the year, and it's like 100, and then whatever that numbers after that was. It was like just over 100,000. But that was my first real understanding of manifestation and what it means to speak into existence your goals and what you want. And so, of course, I went on to, I'm like, okay, I did this once. Like, let's keep going. What else can I create? And so that really started a mission of mine to go and make as much money as possible and help as many people as possible in the corporate space that I could. And so I did, and I won all kinds of awards. I got sent all over the country for, these different sales awards and helping a lot of people through the years. But then we got on that burnout wheel again, and I was making all of this money, more money than I had imagined. I was making more money in some months than I had ever imagined making in a year. And I was completely exhausted and burned out and crying on my way home from work. And I'm like, this doesn't feel like this should be the way that it is, right? Everyone tells you that like money doesn't buy happiness, but sometimes we got to figure that out for ourselves. And so that would lead me to about 2019. I decided to leave my corporate job and I joined my partner, who is a founder of a financial advising practice here in Pittsburgh. And I joined his practice. And really, it's been incredible since then because I still am a financial advisor by day. But now my business is built and it's pretty semi-passive at this point. So what that's allowed me to do is free up my time and energy to take all of the things that I've learned about not only the masculine structures around money, meaning the budgeting and the investing and all the real kind of foundational aspects of money, but then marrying it with the more spiritual approaches of the mind, the body, and the soul, where we're using manifestation and understanding quantum physics and how the mind works and neuroscience and the nervous system and how all of that comes into play with your relationship with money. And what I've learned through the years is it's not so much about the strategy in terms of what investment do I need to, what's the right investment that's going to make me rich, or what's the right strategy that I'm going to use in my business. It's more, yes, we need strategy. We need all of those things, but it's more about our belief in ourselves and how regulated are we around our emotions and money. It's more about our relationship with money that dictates whether or not we're going to be successful. And I've learned that through about 20 years now of experience watching people as it, relates to their money. So that's really what's brought me here. I'll pause because I know it's a lot of talking, but that's a little bit about my story and what brought me here today.
Amazing. I think it resonates, that story, right? Money seems to be the number one limiting belief. I can't make that. That's not for me. And it's just a belief that we took on when we were kids. Like I know my mom, we can't afford that. Don't do that. Like, and it's all right. And it's like, oh, I guess I don't deserve that. I guess I can't afford it. You found a way. And it sounds like you found it at the perfect time when you saying about leaving that 2019 so that when COVID came along, you were already ready to go. Is that right?
Yeah, it was incredible because had I like waited another 6 months, I probably wouldn't have done it. And I forgot to mention this part too, that my now business partner is actually the mentor that I was talking about that I had met 12 years prior to that, who helped me, see this different path. So I really feel like mentors can be cheat codes. And I know that you know this, JP, as well, because you help so many people with coaching. And I just feel like, again, sometimes someone else's belief in whether or not you can do it is enough to get started, even if you don't have a ton of belief in yourself or whether or not you can do it because of maybe your childhood or the way that you were raised or the programming that you've kind of experienced through your life. Borrowing someone else's belief is also okay. And it's funny, it's really cool to see that transition of Mike, who was my mentor, becoming my business partner. So really anything can happen. And as long as you have someone's belief, right? Doesn't even have to be yours in the beginning. But as long as you have that belief and that vision of what is possible, you really can go and create anything that you desire. That's my belief system, at least.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think it's so powerful, right? The beliefs. So, okay, in October, we gave this summit. It was called Creativity is Your Birthright. And one thing I noticed through all the different speakers was that some were just mostly science, some were spiritual. Everyone had both, but they started at one and ended up at the other.
Yeah.
And as I'm listening to you talk, it sounds like you started at the science side, now you're at the spiritual side. And I was the opposite. I was spiritual, and now I'm learning the science. And they're the same thing, but it's just, to me, it's crazy that they overlap and that we all start somewhere and it seems that mostly end up the other. But my question there would be like, so money's an energy, right? It's just energy. And so can you speak to that and maybe some of the misconceptions that people have around money?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a big question, but let's dive in. So everything is energy, right? It sounds like your listeners already know this, otherwise you wouldn't bring it up so casually. So quantum physics tells us that everything is energy. And so if everything is energy, then money is also energy. And money is a sort of static energy where it vibrates at a certain frequency. And as long as you are attuning yourself to that frequency, through letting go. And I believe that this is the way we do that, is not necessarily by working harder, trading more time for money, sacrificing, hustling, etc. Because I did all of that. That will get you so far in life, by the way. Like, you can subscribe to society's hustle culture and make money, but at what cost? And I think that was, for me, what led me to going down this path, which is living more of a soul-powered life, which is also the name of my podcast. But shameless plug there. But no, it's interesting, right? Because as it relates to money, making money in alignment with your soul's path, that is more fulfilling to me than anything else. Like, you can make a ton of money and still be very unhappy with life. And I saw that again through the years. Some of the wealthiest people that I've seen, um, you know, are very miserable. A lot of times extreme wealth comes with cutting people's throats and, right, doing things that are not necessarily high vibe. So, this conversation really is more about, how do we do this in a way that feels aligned? How do we do this in a way that feels like it's coming from our purpose, or that it's tied back in with our mind, our body, and our soul? So I believe that money is energy. And a lot of times what happens is we'll get an idea. So it kind of starts at the soul level or your intuition level. And let me know if this resonates with you as well, JP. But a lot of times, like, we'll get this inspiration to maybe start a business, or to do maybe ask for a raise, or do something that is going to help us go and make more money. It's like, oh, that's exciting, I want to do that. But then what happens a lot of times is that idea kind of travels down into the mental body. And it's like, oh, I can't do that. Who am I to do that kind of work? I'm not worthy of that. We're not that type of people, blah, blah, blah. And all these stories begin to come up. And then it's like we'll end up blocking ourselves from taking action because there is this programming or there's this baggage, even though the universe is here like, hey, this is for you. It's like we fight it, right? So there's that internal conflict that can happen. And so my job in the world is to help my clients release all of the things that are in the way to become a vibrational match, because you're saying creativity is your birthright. And along with that, I also believe that abundance is your birthright. But people think that they have to do more in order to make more money. But the truth is, I believe in working with thousands of people at this point, that it's not about doing more. It's about releasing anything that's in the way of you just magnetizing what it is that's already yours, that's already your birthright. And a lot of times it's all of those fear-based responses, those limiting beliefs, even those nervous system responses where your physical body might not feel safe with bringing on all of this wealth. There's a lot that we can go into there. I'm not 100% sure if I answered your question fully, but that's how I experience money. And I truly believe that any single person that wants to make more of it has the ability to. If the desire is on your heart, that's because you're meant to have that. You're meant to go experience more out of life. And you don't need to do more in order to make that happen. You just have to learn how to match the frequency of the money that it is that you want to call in.
Call in. That's a perfect thing. I was just thinking calling in. So some people are rich, they're not happy. Some people are poor and have nothing, they're super happy. So it can't be money. Calling in, we have to change the energy, the frequency. So there's a spiritual element here. And like, how does that play into the mindset? Like for you working with your clients, there's, I'm sure, a spiritual element of it. So how does that play into the mindset of just changing those beliefs? We got to rewire our brain to do what we want, but it's also a frequency, right? You started off there by saying like some working hard, right? I have an affirmation that life is fun and easy. And I say it over and over and over and over again. And guess what? Life is fun and easy.
Yeah, I love that. So much of it has to do with our words. So much of it, if you want to figure out why you're in the situation that you're in right now, listen to yourself for a day. Just listen to the stories that you're telling yourself, right? We work on something inside of my program that is called your money story. And it's really like, what story are you telling yourself about money? What story are you telling yourself about your capabilities to make more of it, or what you're worthy of, or how it's shown up for you, or how, what, so much of the work is based on our past decisions that we've made and how much we're still blaming and shaming ourselves and telling ourselves, I'm not good with money because look at all this evidence that I'm not good with it. And it's like this consistent story that we're in. And the reality is that the more that you tell yourself that story, the more that you reinforce that, and you don't end up letting it go, because what you focus on grows and what you track expands. And so if you are sitting there thinking about all of the terrible decisions that you've made about money, then yeah, you're going to stay stuck in this loop. And it's this shame loop because we put so much shame upon it. And then it's like, okay, we're taking that past literally and we're projecting it out into the future. Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about this in the book, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. He also has a whole series called Rewired that is incredible to help explain the neuroscience of how this actually works. But it really does take us breaking free from that old story loop and realizing, number one, that you didn't know what you didn't know. And so the only time that you can do better is when you know better. So if I look at my own journey, I still have this come up to this day where I don't always make the right decision. Like I don't always make the right financial decisions. I don't always make the right relationship decisions. But if every single decision that I made that was quote unquote wrong, I sat there and shamed and blamed myself for it, well, does that actually help me to move forward, or does that just keep me stuck in the past? It's going to keep me stuck in that same loop. And so I've got to forgive myself and move on. I've got to be able to detach from that. And realizing that where you are right now is determined by the things that you've done in the past that, by the way, you cannot change, is also something that's really helpful to see, that where you're going in the future is going to be dependent on what you do now. That doesn't mean you have to bring the past into the present. You can say, you know what, I forgive myself for that. I release the shame. I release the guilt. I forgive myself for making those decisions in the past, but I'm going to choose differently today because I want to create a new future. So I think a lot of it has to do with releasing the things, because if you think about the emotional vibrational scale, like even if you want to Google this and you just want to look at like the vibrational scale of emotions, you will see, okay, if we're talking about energy and frequency here, the lower the vibration, what we're doing when we're in those emotions. So say we're in shame, we're in guilt, we're blaming ourselves, we're in fear. Those are very low vibrational emotions. So if we want to raise our frequency and be able to attract things that are on a higher vibrational frequency scale, we've got to spend more time in those higher vibrational emotions. And sometimes it's not always easy. There's many reasons as to why it's not always easy, but it is that simple.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think you know this, but the tagline for this podcast is "What we focus on expands." And you just said that
I
there.
don't know that I saw. I don't know that I saw that anywhere, JB. That's so cool.
Yeah. And so about those emotions, right? Like when we're holding on, and it's a spectrum that moves. It's not like you just go straight to one and you're there. It will go back down and just life happens, right? But I guess where I'm going is how important is gratitude in this process?
Oh God, gratitude is everything. I literally have a thing hanging up that says gratitude turns what you have into enough. And that really, okay, so gratitude is literally the frequency of overflow. It is the frequency of abundance because when you're in gratitude, you're sending a vibrational frequency out into the universe that I have enough. It's literally saying to the universe, thank you for what it is that I have. Can you give me more, please? Right. And so it's interesting because a lot of times we're so focused on the lack. I'm re-listening to a book right now called The Gap and the Gain. I don't know if you've heard of The Gap and the Gain. It's really, really good. But the author talks a lot about really just how so many of us high achievers, we're always focused on the gap between where it is that we are and where it is that we want to be or some ideal. When instead, if we're focused on the gain, meaning how far we've actually come from where we started, that's gratitude. That's overflow. That's abundance. The more that you can be in the gain in life, the more that you realize how far it is that you've actually come. And because what we focus on grows, we end up magnetizing more of that. There's a reason behind this. We have a part of our brain that's called the reticular activating system, which I'm sure your listeners have heard about. But this is really where this is the part of our brain that focuses on what is important to us. It's kind of like it's the part of your brain where, if you've ever bought a car before,
Happened
and
here this summer.
okay, yeah, where you like, okay,
Whoa, the car's everywhere now.
the car's everywhere. Yeah. It's like, did everybody just have that car already, or did everyone go out and buy the car as soon as you decided to? Well, clearly they already had it, but it wasn't that important to you. It wasn't on your mind to the degree that it is after you bought the car. So I think it's really important. That's the part of your brain that there's many reasons behind this. And we could obviously go into the science behind it, but the point is that our brains are in like this information overload all the time. There's so much happening. And so our brain has to find a way to kind of skinny things down and allow for us to focus on one task at a time. It's just how the brain works. So this is how it's doing this. It's through the reticular activating system. So the things that you focus on, the things in your surroundings that you focus on, the things like I see all of these beautiful, live, love, laugh, like all the things in your background, all these beautiful affirmations, all of the things. Those are things that your brain's picking up on subconsciously. And I've got all the same around here too, because we do need to go at this from many different angles and focus on what it is that we want and not what it is that we don't. And this can start with something so simple as like a gratitude practice in the morning. That's kind of a non-negotiable in my life now, where I start my day off with gratitude. And I can tell you that it's been a game changer. So I don't know if you have the same experience, but it's been huge for me.
The first thing I do when I open my eyes is say thank you 3 times. I have a whole list of affirmations I go through, and then I actually walk through my day and I send love and light to all those people that I have to meet and connect with ahead of time. And because of the quantum field, because it's time doesn't exist, the energy is there. And then when I come into this container, the energy's already been set.
Okay.
Is that Dan Sullivan, that book?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, so this even goes more to your thing about words and what you're speaking. he used to call that the reverse gap, the exact same thing. Like instead of looking where you have to go, look how far you've come and realize that you changed and became a different person. And then it becomes easier to do that. But so reverse gap means you're like, that's what he called it. But it also has like a subliminal thing where it means you're looking backwards and you're looking in the past, right? And
Mhm.
which he's definitely not trying to do. He's trying to go forward. So it sounds like he even came to that conclusion where, hey, I should change the name of this because I keep getting stuck back there.
That's interesting. Yeah, I didn't even know that part. I love their book. So it's Dr. Benjamin Hardy is the one who wrote
Okay.
the book, but it's based on Dan Sullivan's work. So they kind of I listen to audiobooks because I just like to
They
I like
can crush her,
quick.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, and it's really, really fascinating. And then yeah, there's some interviews in there. So it's a really easy listen. But yeah, I love that because then he talks about always measuring backwards and looking at how far you've actually come because every single time I do this and look back at how much I've achieved, it's really easy for us to look ahead and just like at this ideal or these people in our industry or in, whatever. We just look at all of these different ideal situations. But when you can look at how far you've actually come, it really does put you in a place to be able to know, like, I can do this. And it's like a setup for what you want to create and call in the future.
Yeah. And then Benjamin Hardy, does he talks a lot about habits, I think?
Yeah, he's written several books.
So this is a perfect segue into habits about money and mindset and business and how important are the habits and even little things, right? Like just the smaller, even I'm talking about like making your bed in the morning. You don't have to make your bed, but that sets an intention for the rest of my day and my life of like, okay, this is what I want. And if I have a bad day, I can go into a nice made bed at the end.
Well, exactly. Yeah. I think that habits are really, really important, especially as it relates to money. Nowadays, people get into information overload, decision fatigue a lot. And so this is a really good time of year. I'm not exactly sure when this episode will release, but it's a good time of year, one way or another, to take a look at what are some of the things that you want to start doing in your financial life. And I can give some examples of what might be some really good habits, but even just sitting down with your money, I call it having a money date, even once a month, just really sitting with your finances and looking at, okay, what are the inflows? What are the outflows? What does my financial picture look like? That can be really, really helpful because again, what we focus on grows and what we track expands. So the things that we track, they're going to expand because we're putting an importance on them. And the universe is saying, oh, okay, money is important. The relationship with money is important. I also look at money as another relationship in my life because so I'm married, right? And if I were to be fearful every time my husband walked in the door, so every time these are some patterns that I see, like people will get overwhelmed and fearful when they get a bill in the mail or an unexpected whatever it is, right? We get all anxious and we don't want to look at it, or they get anxious when they go to open their checking account and look at their money. Like imagine for a second if every time my husband walked in the store, I'm like anxious and like trying to avoid him. Like what kind of relationship is that, right? Or the opposite of that is some people, depending on their programming around money, get very overly concerned and very anxious and fearful. And money is kind of their sense of safety, where they're like, I need to hoard it all. I can't spend any of it on myself. That's another pattern that I see. And again, imagine if my husband walks in the door, I'm like, when are you coming back? Don't leave. I'm like stuck at his hip. Like that would be also very overwhelming. It's like, hey, let me live for a minute here. And so I look at money like that. It's just like any other relationship in your life. And if you don't prioritize it, you don't sit down with it, you don't make it a priority, then how can this be a two-way conversation? How can this be a two-way relationship? It's like, it's either I don't want to look at it at all, or I'm so overly anxious and attached around it. It's just not a good vibe. It's not a good energy. And so if money is energy, just like everything else, it's really important for us to treat it that way and to work on having a healthy relationship with it, a secure attachment style with it, because that really does lead us to being able to help it to grow and also know that money is there to be a support system for us. It's there to support us with living the life that we want to live and making the kind of impact that we want to make.
Yeah. I love this. So there's like the emotional thing that we bring to it, right? Negative or positive, but there's an emotion And I don't know if money is emotional. It shouldn't be. It's not. There's like the money doesn't care about your feelings, right? So it's up to us. But because we're human and because we do have those emotions, entrepreneurs, how do you help them to heal their emotions so that they can get to the money side without bringing that emotion to it where there's never enough or there's some kind of lack, or you have to get rid of the emotions in order to just, like you said, I love the part about just once a month. That's how I do my bills. I don't spend lots of time. I don't do it weekly. I don't anxious. I'm not anxious about it. I sit down once a month, maybe half an hour, and that's it. It's done. And then I don't really have to worry or think about it. But how would you help an entrepreneur separate maybe those emotional aspect of it? Because it could, the emotions could end up tricking you into making bad decisions.
Well, and they do. I love the question, JP. So it's really, it comes down to number one, understanding that there is a nervous system aspect of this. Money in our society can equal survival, right? Like, so there is a deep aspect of this that is not something that we can just override really easily or quickly. Like, so to give you an example, if you grew up in a household like mine where there was a lot of chaos, a lot of survival around money, a lot of fights around money, what my nervous system imprint is or was throughout my childhood and into my early adult years was that money equals fights, money equals chaos, money equals uncertainty, and money is not safe. Talking about money is not safe, having money is not safe, because to the nervous system, what is familiar is safe, and what is unfamiliar is unsafe. Now, this ties back to tribal times. This is again it's tied back to the survival part of our brain. You think of tribal times when you walked out of your tent or your cave or whatever you were living in back then, right? And you saw something that was unfamiliar, say a tiger or a bear. It's like, okay, this is dangerous. I don't recognize what this is. It could be a threat. I've got to run away, or I've got to fight this thing off. And so what happens is our brains are not evolved enough to know the difference between a real or a perceived threat. So when we're acting as though money is like in my childhood, right, where every time I'm opening my bank account, I'm getting activated, I'm in a place of fight or flight or freeze or shutdown. Now I'm just reinforcing the belief that money isn't safe. And so my nervous system, no matter how hard I try, no matter how hard I work, no matter how many hours I put in, no matter what it is that I do, money's not going to feel safe to my body. And so I'm either going to repel it or I'm going to receive it, but then I'm going to find ways to spend it and get rid of it. So this happens a lot with people, with lottery winners, with people who receive, large influxes of money, have fast success in business. You see a lot of people who really kind of, climb very quickly, but then tend to lose it all. A lot of that is stemming from the fact that their nervous systems are not regulated.
And because they don't think they deserve it, so they just spend it, or because their habits as well? Or...
So there's a couple reasons. This is where the nervous system is actually deeper than even just the mind, because new research is showing that about 80% of our decisions are made from the body up to the brain, meaning that the nervous system is dictating our decisions on average about 7 seconds before our brain can rationalize that decision. And so that's kind of why, like, our instincts will kick in. I don't know if you ever heard of stories where mothers, they'll have like superhuman strength because their kid is about to like get run over by a car. All of a sudden, like they spring into action. They're like, I don't even know what happened. My body just took over and I saved my child. Or, those kinds of instinctual things. We still have that. I mean, animals have that, right? But we also still have that. And so that's our nervous system keeping us alive, because the primary directive of your nervous system is to keep you alive. It's not to help you thrive. It's not to help you be successful. It's not to help you, go out and have 1 million followers and $1 million business. That's not what the nervous system's job is. It's here to keep you alive, and it's here to keep you in that place of, again, surviving. So if money is not something that was very common in your childhood, is not very common in your life, but you want to go out and create this life where you're creating generational cycles of wealth instead of, potential poverty or, just being kind of status quo or whatever the situation is for you, that's not going to feel safe to the body and to the nervous system. So you will find ways, whether that is with, I see it a lot of times where people make poor financial decisions. They'll lend out a lot of money. Like look at even athletes, right? How many of them make bad business deals or lend all this money to people, or they're like, hey, everyone in their life now sees them as a meal ticket and they feel too guilty, so they give it all away. There's many ways that can show up, but it really that's the core. That's kind of the end result of it. Is at the end of the day they end up with nothing, or they're in the same position that they were before they received all the money.
Yeah,
Or even
you
worse.
definitely, athletes is a good one. You see it a lot. NBA players, hockey players, just people taking advantage of them, and they don't know the belief. They don't feel that they deserve it. They don't take control of it because
Yep.
they're just, oh, this is great.
Yeah.
As we begin to wind down, if this episode resonates with you, please like, subscribe, share, and reach out to Rebekah. Obviously, you can tell she knows what she's talking about. And if you didn't listen to this on video, if you're listening on audio, watch the video, please. I think I'm going to ask about legacy. So, what kind of legacy do you hope that your coaching business leaves behind, both spiritually and professionally?
Great question. So my mission really is to help women specifically. I work a lot with women, but obviously men as well, to take our power back from this structure that we see in the society that we live in right now. We live in a society where money equals power, right? And there's a lot of money in the hands of people who are not using it for good. So I believe that more money, aka more power, back in the hands of those of us who are going to use it for good, and we feel safe enough, we feel deserving enough, we feel good enough to hold on to it, right? That's going to change the trajectory of not only our lives as we know it, but generations to come. And our children can grow up in an environment where good people have a lot of decision-making power in this world. And that, I believe, is how we create true and lasting change. So it's not just about the money, it's about what comes along with it. And then also, I believe that when we're in survival mode around money, we are so tunnel visioned where it's like all we're focused on is money. I remember that time in my life where I didn't know how my daughter's next meal was going to come into play, right? All I was focused about was making more money. But when you can make more and you have more and your needs are met, then it's kind of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Now you can kind of open up your awareness as to, oh, I have all the things I need. What if I could help this person get what they need? What if I could help that person? What if I could help that person? What if I could make this a mission and a goal of mine? And Dr. Jim Rohn, he talks about or I'm not sure if it's Dr. Jim Rohn, but Jim Rohn talks about how, you help enough people get what they want and your needs will always be met. You're always going to get what you need and what you want. And so to me, this is more about a mission and a purpose that I feel like I have to fulfill on, because I want to help good people have the means that they need in order to make the impact and the income that they desire in this world.
Yeah, that's awesome. Maslow's hierarchy. So the very bottom one, physiological needs. And then that's the things like water, food. The next is safety. So we want security, employment. Love and belonging is the third one. Esteem and self-actualization. So I was looking at this pyramid one day going, man, there's a lot of people who aren't getting the third one, love and belonging. Then I go, oh my God, you know what? There's a lot of people not even getting the second one, employment, security,
Yeah.
resources, health. And that was the one, it was health. And so this ties back into money because depending on your belief, so if you don't have money and you don't know how to take care of money, then that stress response is always, always turned on. Where's
You
the
got it.
next one? And you said earlier about like not knowing you're gonna do for your daughter, and I've just made me think like how many times in my life, especially when I was younger. I think as you get older, you grow and you're smarter. But how many times did I not have the money for the rent, but somehow it worked out and I got it, right? So if you're here today, then something like God, there's a God, he's looking out for you. And if you're listening to this, definitely you probably understand that. I think I ask everyone this question. This is the Phase 4 podcast. And phase 4 in the 6 phase meditation by Vishen Lakhiani. It's all about creating your future 3 years out. So where is Rebekah 3 years from today?
I love this question. And I love that meditation as well. I love Vision and Mind Valley and the whole thing. So, for me, 3 years from today, I have a business where I am speaking on stages and impacting thousands of lives. One of my biggest fears was public speaking years and years ago. So even coming on to this podcast, even doing the things that I'm doing now, is definitely, it has taken a lot for me to get here, but I even want to go further with it. I'm like, okay, can I keep pushing myself? Can I keep growing? Because I know that I'm doing the inner work to be able to handle that. So, 3 years from now, I'll be on a stage near you, just really speaking, teaching my method, teaching women and men how to take their power back in their finances. And hopefully at that point, helping millions of lives.
Wow, I love it. Just under a year ago, I put on a conference called The Warrior Woman Within. And I wish I knew you then because you would have been speaking on a stage with us at that summit.
I love that.
Yeah, as I'm just looking at my notes here, we covered a lot. So public speaking is the number one fear of people, even over death, which doesn't even make sense. But
Yeah.
we've covered so much. We've covered limiting beliefs, self-love, healing, growth, alignment we didn't talk about. Maybe we could talk about that for a minute near the end. Self-sabotage, all these other things. But I guess once you start to grow and you learn and implement all the tools you're talking about, then you're aligned. And so how can somebody who's just listening to this going, what are they even talking about? I'm so far away. It seems so far away. And to get them from where they are to alignment.
Yeah, great question. So, I mean, I have resources, of course, that I can send for your listeners to check out. I have a bunch of free resources. You can come to my Instagram. There's plenty of resources there to really get started. I do have a method that I teach, and I'll just really briefly go into that, if that's okay. I don't know if we have time. Okay, good.
There we go. So
Okay, so the method is called the Align method, actually, and this is a method that I was in a meditation several years back, and I said, you know what, God, angels, universe, can you give me how did I do this? Like, how did I create the success that I did? Because sometimes I think we just create success and then we're looking back like, I don't even know what I did there, right? I don't even know how I got here. And so I actually got this in the form of a meditation. I got this method and it spells out the word align, and it's an acronym to help you to start the journey of healing your relationship with money so that you can take your power back in your finances and make the kind of money that you want. So it starts with A stands for awareness. This is awareness to the blocks that you have. So a lot of times, and we talked about this because you were on my podcast right before this, and we talked about how a lot of people don't have awareness to their own blind spots and how it is that they're showing up in ways that are perpetuating the financial cycles that they're in. So really cultivating awareness to some of your blocks, like limiting beliefs and where you are self-sabotaging and nervous system responses and all of the things that we talked about. I do have a free training on this, so I'm going to briefly go over this. And if you want to learn more, you can definitely dive into that. But once you have awareness to your blocks, this is really where we move into L, which is let them go. It's not necessary that just because you've been doing something your whole life to hold on to that. If it's not serving you, guess what? You can let it go. It's not always as easy as that, but it is that simple. And so I have very profound ways to help you to let those things go. And once you have kind of cleared out some of these beliefs and these blind spots and these ways of being that are no longer serving you, then we can move into I, which stands for identify where you want to go instead. This is kind of like having this blank canvas where maybe your whole life you've been seeing life through the lens of I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, I'm not that type of person. But once that's gone, now you have this like, oh, what do I want to do? Like, if money weren't an issue, if money weren't even a thing, what would I be doing with my life? Or if I could make any amount of money that I want, what would it look like? And we start to be able to dream and vision and be able to tap into this highest version of you, this highest timeline. And once you have that crystal clear vision of where it is that you want to go instead of where you've been, that's where we can move into G, which is getting into inspired action. This isn't about being on the hamster wheel and moving just to move. This is about how am I making decisions that are going to actually move me towards that goals. It's values conversations that we had, right? It's knowing your values, being able to tap into your intuition, being able to know your unique language that you have with the universe or God or whatever your belief system is. We all have that inner, I call it an inner GPS system that's guiding us every single day as to making decisions in accordance with where it is that we want to go. And sometimes the ego voice, the trauma voice, the mind, the matrix, whatever you want to call it, that voice can be very loud. And so it's really important to be able to tame that and then listen to the voice that's going to guide you to where it is that you want to go. And once we're moving in accordance to our highest timeline, what ends up happening typically is we start seeing the money come in, the followers come in, whatever it is that you're trying to manifest. You start to see physical manifestations of that. But then we got to move on to pillar number 5, step number 5, which is N. And that stands for normalizing and stabilizing this level of success before you try to move on to the next. This is where the nervous system regulation comes in. This is where, we can't go from 0 to, you can, but, it's very, you have to really get your nervous system on board with if you want to go from 0 to $1 million a month overnight. I mean, it's just something that, that's such a drastic jump. And so a lot of times people think that they're ready for the next level when they're not. And that's what leads to self-sabotage. And that's what leads to us losing it if we have, I would much rather at this stage of my life have the kind of growth that my nervous system can hold on to than have this massive success that I'm not going to be able to hold because I haven't regulated my nervous system. I'm just going to lose it all anyway, because the stories and the conversations that happen after that are, yeah, now I know I'm not good enough, right? Because I couldn't even hold it. And the ramifications of that become even more deeply embedded, and it's more proof that you can't have what you want. So I'd rather you kind of work on that now, but that's the Align method. And again, I'm happy to provide a training. If you guys want to dive deeper into that, I'll gift that to your listeners for free if that's something that you're on board with.
Oh yeah, for sure. That's amazing. I love that. Instead, it sounds kind of like phase 4. Both of them are like, here's a magic wand. What do you want? Let's play. And what it does, it allows you to dream forward, and then it gives your brain a target to reach for. Like, if we don't know, the universe needs time. Like you're saying, $1 million. There's a couple people that might be able to manifest overnight, but the rest of us, the universe is going to take time. You're where you are now, and the universe needs a minute after you explain what you want to align things and to make people come in your life and the right person, the right time, the right email, whatever it is. So I love the entire method. Very aligned.
Yes, thank you.
And so before I ask my final question, maybe actually, do you have a program? You have a signature program, I think. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. So my signature program is, pun intended, the Aligned Money Program. And it's really all about helping individuals release the blocks that are in the way of them making money in alignment with their soul's path, feeling good about it. Tony Robbins talks about success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure. And I've lived that. I believe that wholeheartedly. And so it's not just my goal to help you make money, but it's helping you to make money and doing it with ease and less efforting and less time, and being able to enjoy your life, going on vacation and taking time off. All of those things are what really make life what it is, right? And so the Aligned Money Program is my signature program. But of course, I have, tons of free resources. If anyone is looking to learn a little bit more, you can definitely dive into some of my free trainings or ebooks or any of the things, and listen to my podcast, which is the Soul Powered Podcast. You will hear JP on there as well, because we are going to release an episode after the new year. But yeah, there's lots of different ways to get in touch with me, and hopefully, I'll be able to share all of the links and everything. But yeah, that's basically how you can work with me. And I would invite you to dive into a free training and see if it's for you.
Brilliant. So Speaking of alignment, I saw your Instagram is Rise with Rebekah. And I want you to know that the day I was born, the number one song on the top Billboard 100 was called Rise Up. And I'm just like,
Wow. Are you kidding? That's so cool.
yeah, it's if you know the Biggie song Hypnotize, it's like the beat from that, but it was from like a jazz musician named Herb Alpert. But I was like, wow. Um,
Wow.
right. And then yeah, before I do ask my final question, is there any message of hope I always let the guests take it where they want. So if it's a message of hope or inspiration, if you have something to sell it, combine both, take it away.
Okay. Yeah. So I think that the message of hope is really just where you are right now is not it's not indicative of where it is that you are going. I know a lot of times we think that where we are right now, it feels like this is going to be how it is forever. That happens because maybe we don't have the support, we don't have the vision, we don't have the people in our lives who are building us up. I love JP's My Five method, where you just grab five different people that you want to learn from, surround yourself with people who are on the same mission, or who are even doing better than you. Because if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. I'm going to tell you that 100,000%. It might feel great, and it feels great to the ego to be the smartest one, the wealthiest one, the one who's doing the best in the room. I spent many years thinking that that was the way to do it. It's not. Get in the room with other people. If you're not happy with where you are right now, or you just want more out of your life, get around people who are going to inspire you. Get in the rooms where what you are visioning for your life looks small. Not because of anything other than like, I believe life is about growth. If you are not growing, you're dying. Look at the grass. We are not here to be stagnant. And if you're stagnant, you're probably feeling like crap, right? That's why we feel like crap, is because we're not meant to stay in the same place. The universe is evolving. You're a part of the universe, and the universe wants to support you in your growth. So get around people who are going to help to cultivate that vision. There's a lot of reasons why you would want to do this. But the main thing is you are the average of the five people that you spend the most time with. So get in those rooms. And I promise you that once you start to do that, you're going to see massive changes in your life. So find yourself a mentor, find yourself people, get in the room, get with JP, right? All of the things, because I believe mentors are cheat codes. And if I didn't meet my mentor that day 12 years ago, I would likely not be anywhere near where I'm at right now. He literally changed the trajectory of my entire life. And that's why I think I'm so passionate about doing the same, because I know the value of being in someone's life and seeing more in them than they see in themselves. So get around those people.
100%. You started at the beginning. You said that you met that person and it was not expected, but there is something where when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. So if you feel called to reach out to Rebekah, go ahead. And my final question is, how can people reach out to you?
Absolutely. So hopefully you'll have in the show notes some of the free resources. You can definitely get on to those trainings. But also, I'm on all of the channels as Rise with Rebekah. My name is spelled differently. So definitely make sure you check the show notes for that. If you want to shoot me a DM, let me know that this podcast, that you came through this podcast, or, how this impacted you. I love to connect. I personally answer all of my DMs. It might take me a little while to get back, but I definitely am more than happy to chat with you and hear from you. And you can definitely find me everywhere on socials as Rise with Rebekah.